So, in the interest of time, let me somewhat race through the next couple slides, the last couple slides. Fashion as we know it today is largely a product of Western modernity, which is characterized by industrial capitalism, global production networks, mass production and consumption, mass media, and the culture industry. And by that, we mean fashion wasn't as prevalent centuries ago before this onset of Western modernity. All of the values and importance and significance that we place on what is and isn't fashionable, that simply wasn't a consideration in a pre Western modernity context. It's kind of a luxury that sprung up once capitalism gave certain people enough money to start thinking about luxuries besides just the bare necessities for survival. So that when you're indulging in fashion, you're kind of indulging in capitalism and subtly and implicitly reinforcing that structure in our society. A system that's largely based on exploitation of labor, such as in sweatshops and global power inequalities. We're kind of complicit in keeping that cycle going. And we live in a discourse where we want to set ourselves apart from the crowd, where we're made to desire individuating ourselves and making our own identity and stand out from the crowd and set ourselves apart from the masses. And in order to do this, we are made to want to consume the cultural and material products of capitalism, including fashion items and accessories and all of the media materials, the texts surrounding this discourse. But by doing so, you're still buying and consuming mass-produced items that don't necessarily set you apart, but ingratiate you into the system in kind of a pseudo individuation, a false individuation. And pursuing the subject positions that are opened for you and allowed for you and constructed as desirable, but are still premised and based on consuming the items that are produced by capitalism for you to consume. So we love our fashion, we love our brands, but we don't usually consider the source, consider the origins, the often dark origins of exploitative working conditions in developing countries that are then shipped over to our stores for us to consume without thinking about all that. We're just glossing over the production behind our consumption. There's a saying that if you like eating hot dogs, never go to a hot dog factory to find out how hot dogs are made. Because once you see how they're made and what goes into them, you're never going to want to eat a hot dog again. It's the same thing with fashion. We'd rather just be blissfully ignorant and enjoy what we have on the surface without trying to dig any deeper, because we're not going to like what we find in terms of the human cost of our enjoyment of fashion. So fashion is an interesting paradox in that you need fashion to fit in, and like we said on a previous slide, set yourself up as a member of a culture, but you also need fashion to stand out and to not be too similar to fellow members of your culture. So it's a fine line between fitting in with a certain social group and becoming one of the masses. So finally, although fashion has been used as a facilitator of Western imperialism and fashion is largely a product of modern global capitalism, it can and has been also used in liberating ways to resist and defy existing modes of economic and political and cultural and gender exploitation. And women have specifically been subjugated in both the production of fashion in terms of their labor exploitation, especially in developing countries, and their consumption of fashions, like, for example, stereotypes that objectify women based on what they're wearing. Like if you're wearing something that's seen and received as too revealing or scandalous, then you may be defined by others in that society as being a woman of loose morals. But there's also been resistance to this exploitation and subjugation in the production and consumption of fashion through fashion itself. Fashion can be used in exploitative ways or emancipatory ways. They can be used to confine us or liberate us. Just as the body is a site of discursive struggle, our fashion choices are also a site of discursive struggle. So in various like women's marches throughout history, their clothing choices during those marches were very deliberate and strategic to represent women in unified ways as a united stand, a united front, or celebrate themselves as women. Could be through donning a certain color and reclaiming that color, or wearing a pin or a certain fashion accessory that denotes and connotes meanings related to the collective struggle of women and the individual experiences of women. So an example you can see at the back of this slide is the band Pussy Riot, the Russian feminist punk rock group, who are not only musicians but political activists and performance artists. And in this image, they're holding a protest in front of the Kremlin in Moscow. And you can see what they're wearing, the brightly colored dresses with the balaclavas covering their face, the ski masks. It can be seen as an empowering thing that gives them anonymity and gives them strength. And it's a symbol that can be rallied around for other women around the world to see themselves and recognize themselves in that and potentially join that movement in decentralized ways. It's kind of a rallying banner around which other women can identify and join and unite. Maybe you can think of other examples of clothing being used for the purpose of protest or emancipation. And that is just about it for today. We're out of fashion. We're all sold out. So I guess that's it for today.